Within, divinely imbued, science and numbers, they both testify. Proof of the Torah that none can deny. Knowledge beyond what men could conceive, written in words that we still believe. The secrets of life in each ancient line, all leading us back to the source so divine. The Torah stands forever pure.
Yeah, I mean, Patty, see everybody. Start in a moment. Make sure you share this. Get some more people on. Always nice to learn with more people.
Spoken, fulfilled in our sight. And Yisrael stands by Hashem's own light. Archaeology proves what's written was real. The story of ages, its truth we feel. From Sinai's heights to our very day, the Torah's guidance lights our way. The Torah stands forever pure. Its truth.
Amen. God bless Israel. Thank you, Daniel. Amen.
Torah stands forever pure. Its truth endures so clear, so sure. From prophecies to history's might, it shines with everlasting light. No doubt remains, just look and see. The Torah's wisdom is the key. Through every test, it's clear as day. The divine truth will never sway. It's divine truth will never sway. Yeah. The divine truth will never sway. Study the Torah, let it fill your soul. Its divine proof will make you whole. In every word, in every sign, you'll find the truth so pure, divine.
B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back on our Tuesday night Shiur, War of Amalek series. Tonight's Shiur is sponsored and also for the Refuah Shlema by Josie Padova. Hashem will give her Refuah Shlema, Refuat HaNefesh, Refuat HaGuf, and also for the Refuah Shlema of Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Sarah bat Levana, Avi Mori David ben Nesriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Jorah, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahides that continue to learn with us, continue to support the organization. Anyone that wants to support can donate at be'ezrathashem.org, or you can become a paid subscriber on YouTube, and certainly have many opportunities to support. You could also send a check. There's plenty of ways to do good things, Baruch Hashem. Also, to remind everyone, the Kiruv packages of the Asher Yatzar boxes, Baruch Hashem, are going out literally by the dozens. The UPS driver, on one hand, loves us, on the other hand, hates us because there's, Baruch Hashem, so many boxes and they're heavy. But we're sending them out all over the place, and Baruch Hashem, people love them. We're meeting a lot of new people, so that's a good thing. Also, for the Tikkun Brit that we just started, Shovavim, we started a mini-series of short films that are published on my channel, on the YouTube channel, each day this week. We already published 2 of them, and there's going to be a few more coming this week, Bezrat Hashem. If you actually want to do the ultimate tikkun of Tikkun Brit, aside from obviously doing tshuva, aside from obviously donating as much as you can to publicize the Tikkun Brit film, we're making it easier for you. We have these cards. On the other side, there's the AI Rabbi. You distribute a bunch of these cards in your community, in the kosher markets, in the yeshiva, in the shuls, wherever there's Jewish people, and you're going to help a lot of people do tshuva, especially now. This is an auspicious time to do tshuva for Tikkun Brit. You can get these cards for free from our Kiruv store, kiruvstore.org. So with that being said, Rabotai Yekarim, we're back to Rav Elchanan Wasserman, who, Baruch Hashem, has been guiding us as if he's speaking to us right now, right this very second. And after letting us know that really the ultimate problem that we have in the war of Amalek is that we're not using our weapon the right way. And the ultimate weapon, the only weapon to fight Amalek, is the Torah. And the problem that we have is when people don't value Torah, they don't value Da'at Torah, meaning the actual words of the Torah and what is the bottom line, the words of the sages, and how they go together. The oral Torah and the written Torah, they go together. There's no such thing as one without the other. When we don't have an understanding of that, we don't have respect for the Chachamim, we end up losing the war before we started it. And the war of Amalek is not a war that was fought one time at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, or perhaps another time with Shaul was supposed to fight them even more than he did. No. The war of Amalek, as the Torah itself says, this is a war from generation to generation. And the question goes, why did the Torah say that Milchemet Amalek is Milchemet me'Hashem be'Amalek bedor dor? That this war of Hashem against Amalek is from generation to generation. Why don't they just say forever? Should say forever. That's because, Rabotai Karim, that each generation has a new face to Amalek, a new version of Amalek. And even though the war of Amalek is in every generation, Rav Elchanan Wasserman is going to explain to us that each generation has a different type of Amalek, and therefore the fight has to be a fight that's different from the previous generation. And we have to know how to fight the fight of the day, rather than the fight of yesterday. And the big question we're going to address tonight is, who is the face of Amalek today? What are we going to do with them? This, obviously, Amalek is the ultimate enemy of Hashem, ultimate enemy of the Torah, ultimate enemy of Am Yisrael. And needless to say, there's a fight that has to happen. And it's not something that a person can just be passive and say, oh, well, let somebody else do it. Because this is part of our mitzvot. This is part of our fulfilling the Torah. These are going to be the things that Rav Elchanan Wasserman is going to enlighten us with, and Be'ezrat Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. Now, as we said, Rabotai, the Milchemet Amalek is one that we have to deal with in our present time. It's not just something that we read about. And Rav Elchanan Wasserman is continuing the words that he learned from the Chafetz Chaim HaKadosh, and says as follows: Ba'avonotenu harabim, in our many sins, or meaning due to our many sins, anu sumchim al divrei hakomer yoter me'al divrei Chazal. We are in a generation where people are relying more on the words of the priests and other forms of idolaters and heretics than they actually believe the words of the sages. אם אביי ורבא פוסקים ומחליטים על פלוני שאיננו יהודים, אין אנו סומכים על זה, ועדיין הוא אצלנו בחזקת יהודי. אבל אם הכומר יעיד בחתימתו על אותו האיש שיצא מכלל יהודי, אז גם אנחנו מכירים אותו לנוכרי. Here he is telling us, in the name of the Chafetz Chaim, that we find ourselves in a generation where people are relying on the words of the priests, the YouTubers, the heretics, but not the words of the sages, not the words of the Chachamim of today, not the words of the Chachamim of the previous generation. To such an extent that if in our Gemara, our sages Abaye and Rava paskined that this particular person does not meet the halachic qualifications of a Jew, and therefore the person is not a Jew. No, but the heretics say, no, we love everybody. He's a Jew in our eyes. But if a priest says he's not a Jew, you know what? If the priest says he's not a Jew, then he must not be a Jew. This, Rabotai Karim, may sound strange to you, may even sound something that's hard to believe, but we'll see and we'll dig and we'll realize that the words of the Chafetz Chaim and his Talmid Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman are as true as ever. Because every generation has a new face of Amalek, many times people are fighting in the dark, not really realizing who and when and what. At the time of the Maharil Diskin, some 100 years ago plus, he actually canceled a decree that was in Yerushalayim which forbid the yeshivot, the teachers, from teaching English in schools. Now you'd ask yourself, why was there even a decree not to teach English? And why would he cancel it? Him along with other chachamim. Well, that's because when that decree was passed by the sages, it was because the maskilim, the enlightenment, the reformers, or easier said, the heretics of that generation, were Jewish people that were trying to infiltrate the Jewish community with their perverted ideas, with their heretical ideas, not by going through the front door and telling them, listen, would you like to listen? No, okay, we'll try somewhere else. No. They will try to do the same thing that missionaries do. Go through the back door. Pretend like they're Jewish. Pretend like they mean well. Pretend like they're helping because they donate to the Zionist movement and all types of other backdoor types of strategies that the Satan helps them do. What did they do? They said, listen, we're here just to teach English. And you need to teach English. You have to teach. That's the language of the day. Because as soon as they let them in to start putting English into the school, say, well, listen, not only you need to learn English, you also need to learn Spanish, French. You have to also learn geography. You have to learn this. You have to learn all types of things, and for a couple of different reasons. Number one, because during these types of classes, they were able to teach the language, but with words that are going to pervert the minds of the young kids, the innocent kids that do not know everything that is false and don't know how perverted the mind of the heretics are. So they're just listening. They think that they're learning English, but in reality, they're learning heresy. This is what's happening in schools today, where they tell you, oh, look, we have a really nice teacher. She really means well. She loves kids. She loves the Torah. And they let her into the school, only to find out, perhaps even years after the fact, that she is not even a she, it's a he. So this, Rabotai, is happening in public schools, in yeshivot, and it's not only today. And the Maharil Diskin said that in those days, these maskilim would come into the schools in order to try to plant their ideas during those classes. And if not that, simply just take up the school time, as much time as possible. Because if they're able to teach English, and they're able to teach history, and they're able to teach geography, and they're able to teach all types of arts and crafts, and everything they possibly can, that means that there's less time to teach Torah. And that was the whole goal of the maskilim. But now says the Maharil Diskin, that Satan, that Yetzirah, that face of Amalek is no longer the case in our generation. The face has changed. And therefore we don't need to continue with this decree of not being allowed to teach English. We don't have that problem anymore. It's perfectly okay to learn English or teach English, and that's actually what ended up happening. So what's the new face? What's the new face, Rabotai? You see, what we have to know, Rabotai, is that each generation's Amalek, each generation's Satan has a new face that we have to fight accordingly. And Rav Elchanan Wasserman says that the only constant in every one of these wars against Amalek in every generation is that it all relies on a poverty in Da'at Torah values. Meaning that when the public does not understand Torah, when the public does not know Torah, we are in trouble. And the problem today is to such an extent that it's not even that the general public do not know Torah. Rather, the problem has been magnified to the point that we don't even have people, the general public does not have the basic ability to understand what the verses even say, even if you explain it to them. Meaning, we're not talking about, you could just read it in your language. No, that's not the problem. There's, Baruch Hashem, the Torah has been translated to 70 languages. There's no shortage of translations. The problem is that when people read the Torah, like they do in the church, like they do in the Hereticville, like they do in all types of other places, then they're not going to understand the meaning of the verses. And they're going to interpret the message from Hashem in a very perverted way. And we are finding ourselves in a generation where the average person out there does not even know what the Torah says, even if you explain it to them. And he doesn't know by choice, because he simply does not want to accept the fact that the Torah called all of this rainbow people a toeva, an abomination. He doesn't want to accept that. He doesn't want to accept the fact that a mechalel Shabbat is cutting themselves away from this world and the next world and is considered an idolater. He doesn't want to accept that. He doesn't want to accept the words of the sages. He doesn't want to accept the word of God. He doesn't want to accept anything. But has the audacity to interpret the verses his or her own way. No, this doesn't mean an abomination, because it also says abomination on someone that eats chametz on Pesach. It also says abomination on something else, and then something else. So it's just another word. It's they're just trying to make it exciting. What are you talking about? Each one is said for a specific reason, and Chazal explained to us all of these reasons. No, I don't think you're right. I don't think this is the will of Hashem. You're making people separate from each other. The problem, Rabotai Karim, is that you have different faces of Amalek. Some are the more obvious ones to those that have eyes that see, such as the Messianic Jews, which is in reality Christians in disguise. Whether it's the black Hebrew Israelites, or some of them don't like to be called black Hebrew Israelites because they also accept some other people of color, whether it be the Mexicans or the other ones that they decide that they like, because everyone has a united opinion that they hate white people. So the Hebrew Israelites are another form. But realistically speaking, Rabotai, the worst enemy of all, the worst face of modern day Amalek is the same face that it's always been. Based on the verse, your conquerors, your destroyers will come from within you. The worst face of Amalek are the heretical Jews. Jews that simply reject the Torah. Not because of simple ignorance, but simply because they decide they know more than the Torah. They know more than the sages. They know more than the rabbis. These heretical Jews, unfortunately, have increased and multiplied in number since the worst tragedy in modern day era happened, which was the coronavirus. The coronavirus was not a tragedy because of the number of people that died, because technically, if you look at the statistics around the world, more or less the same number of people that die every year died during those couple of years we had the coronavirus. The number didn't go up by 50 or 100% like some people imagine. And the vaccine that everyone thought, if you take it, everyone's going to die, that didn't happen either. But yet it's still considered the worst tragedy that happened to Am Yisrael in recent history. And the reason why is because that started literally opening two giant doors for the Satan to cause Jewish people to abandon Da'at Torah. Countless religious Jews literally decided to make their rabbis, make Gdolei Ador, make the sages, make the oral Torah their enemy, and still consider themselves religious. And it's not uncommon anymore to see a religious Jew who does not have any rabbi. In fact, it's rare to find someone that says, I have a rabbi, that he's a real rabbi that I'm going to at all times for everything. People literally pick their rabbis based on picking who they're going to talk to today, like a friendly meeting. Today it's this one, tomorrow is the next one. And if they don't like what this rabbi said, they just go to another rabbi. They switch rabbis like they switch socks. And that's part of the outcome of the Satan's trap for the generation, which it really wasn't to kill people with a virus or with a vaccine or with some type of, a hidden government plan. No. The whole strategy of coronavirus was the Satan's trap to cause people to lose faith in Da'at Torah. And that's exactly what's happened. And that's why the number of heretics has multiplied tremendously in the last few years. And because of the technological advancements, where today you don't even need a cameraman, you don't need anything to simply just make yourself a public speaker. You don't need an audience. You just simply need a phone that you could literally get for a couple of dollars, if not for free, and just record yourself and put yourself all over the internet. And the Satan helps all of the heretics publicize themselves better than the best marketing companies on planet Earth. And what ends up happening is that you see that, yes, we have problems from the Christian missionaries and the Hebrew Israelites and all other types of idol worshippers and heretics that cause confusion. But the biggest confusion is caused by the heretical Jews. Because what ends up happening is that this Amalek, this face of Amalek, leads people to trust the opinions of priests, the opinions of YouTubers, the opinions of fools, more than they trust the words of the sages. And that's in essence what the Chafetz Chaim is saying here. That you have a situation that people would listen to words of the sages, words of Rava, words of Abaye, telling you that if a person has a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother, then halachically, according to the Torah, he is not considered Jewish. The child of a parent that's Jewish and a mother that's not Jewish is not Jewish according to the Torah. But if they hear some YouTuber with 20,000 views on a video say otherwise, no, look over here, it says the the Shvatim, the tribes are selected based on the father, so why wouldn't Judaism be selected by the father? And look, this priest and this professor and this one, they give you all types of, weird proofs that have nothing to do with Judaism. And people fall for the trap. And people start believing, Rabbi and Abaye are wrong. Yeah, but this is the Talmud, this is the Gemara. Yeah, they make mistakes, they're people just like us. No, they're not people just like us, but you don't understand that. And even if you show these people proofs, you show them verses, you show them halachot, they completely disregard it. And we are finding ourselves in a situation where intermarriage has become standard just as much as corruption in business and politics has become standard. And it's become so standard that parents that literally used to sit shiva, used to mourn after hearing that somebody in the neighborhood, needless to say their own kids, are dating a non-Jew. Today, parents are like, listen, this guy's daughter is marrying a non-Jew and this guy's son is marrying a non-Jew. Listen, if they're happy, what's the problem? What's the problem? Let's just all be together. We'll all have camp together. We'll all have fun together. Yeah, but you realize this one has a child that is now, he is turning into a she and she's turning into a he. You realize where they're going. This is not working out so well. Listen, if that makes them happy, what do you care? Let them be happy. Just accept them as they are. And this type of tolerance for the different poisons of Amalek and his ideology is actually the root, is actually the biggest part of the problem. If the religious community, at the very least, would understand what we're allowed to accept and what we must reject and separate from, then it really wouldn't be such a problem because we know where to run away from. But when you see how the perverted minds of the heretics have infiltrated the communities, have infiltrated even some of the rabbis leading certain communities, have infiltrated the community itself on a regular basis to the point where people are just accepting things that are forbidden by the Torah as if it's a new law, a new Torah. Then you realize that Amalek is not only have a new face, but that face has made itself feel at home in countless Jewish communities that call themselves religious. And if they're in there, then of course, they're everywhere else. Now, today's Amalek, Rabotai, have multiple faces. After we, as an organization, myself, Rav Ephraim, the rest of the team, fought tooth and nail against the missionary organization, One for Israel, Baruch Hashem, Hashem made our efforts succeed where they literally broke up. Even though the organization still exists, and Bezat Hashem, that's only temporary, the face of the organization broke off, the couple of faces of the organization broke off, and their efforts are nowhere near the same, and nowhere near the same amount of actual success. But of course, Amalek doesn't stop. Since then, new faces have arrived. And they're not really coming just from the missionaries pretending to be Jews. No, they're actually coming from the Jewish world, in some cases pretending to be rabbis. In some cases, they are rabbis that are even respected by many people, like the Manis Friedmans of the world. In other cases, they're not even rabbis, but rather they're people that say, listen, I'm nothing. I'm nothing. The Torah is great. Wait, so how is such a person that says the Torah is great, the Torah is amazing, how is such a person a heretic? There's a couple of clowns like this in Israel. And no doubt there's a few of them in the English-speaking world. And there is one everywhere. whether it's the Chen Shaulov, Rasha Merusha, that literally curses the sages on a regular basis, but yet pretends to be a rabbi. I can tell you this Rasha who did tshuva never really did tshuva because he came from the cash advance business. It's almost impossible to do tshuva from after you've pretty much financially murdered so many people. So this Rasha that came from the cash advance business then pretended to be a rabbi and learn Torah and piggyback off of his righteous brother and his success in the rabbinical world and the Kiruv world. He ended up becoming a Rasha that no one has seen coming. But if that wasn't enough, there's also another Rasha that decided to build himself a stage. This Daniel Borisov, I think his name is, Simcha Shaim Yerkav, that again also started off good, started off putting on tefillin and started talking about Judaism, and then he started getting poisoned by what was happening in the media and the coronavirus and everything else, and today he simply decided that he is nothing, but the sages are also nothing. Like he compares himself, no, he's nothing, but he knows more than the sages, and only the Rin Torah is valid, the oral Torah, the halacha, no, not any. In so many words, these two and others like them have become the new missionaries, affecting and infecting the Jewish world with poison to the point where people say, listen, even if I don't agree with him on everything, he still makes sense on some points. Even though I don't agree with him on everything, I like the way he speaks. You realize that according to halacha, not only you're not allowed to hear anything he says, even if he's telling you the weather, you're not even allowed to stand within 6 feet of him. Stand within 6 feet of him. Needless to say, listen to a whole video that he makes. But people are completely oblivious of what Da'at Torah is. Oblivious of it. Because now we have what we're calling the post-corona heretics. These post-corona heretics have become the new missionaries. There's even a heretic that's a Hasid with peyot that continuously speaks against the religious community, the rabbis, the sages, while he's wearing his Hasidic garments. And these new faces are not the first times the world has seen this, because they all have one common denominator. They all pretend to be humble. Now, anyone that has watched my lectures, whether it's the Igeret Aramban or some of the other lectures that we spoke about arrogance, knows that there are different levels of arrogance. There's the obvious arrogance, let's call it like the Donald Trump type of arrogance, someone that's boisterous, that's show off, says he's the best, he's the greatest, he's the richest, he's the whatever, she's the whatever. That's the obvious one. What a lot of people don't know is that that is not the highest level of arrogance. In fact, it's not even close to the level of arrogance of someone that pretends to be humble. A person that pretends to be humble, pretends to be lowly. No, I don't know anything, but I know more than everybody else, but I don't know anything, and I'm nothing. Everything I say, those types of people that pretend to be humble say, listen, I was doing the right thing. I told them just like I heard in a shiur, and I did this, and but in reality, they're just going and marching and dancing around the graves of others. They're as arrogant as you can possibly imagine. That's the one common denominator you have in all of these Amaleks, all of these Erev Rav. They pretend to be humble and lowly. And that's actually part of the trap. So Rav Wasserman says, the truth must be known clearly. And that's that there is no such thing as a Jewish person with the Torah recognizing him as a Jew, with the Torah, there's no such thing as a person that is Jewish without the Torah recognizing him as a Jew. And those people that the Torah concluded that they're not Jewish, no trickery or manipulations of the words in the world would ever make them into real Jews. Meaning that those people that are trying to fool the sages, fool the rabbis, and in essence, implement new laws. Say, listen, even though for the last 3,300 years, the halacha said that Judaism comes from the mother, no, we disagree, it comes from the mother from the father from now on. Or, we feel like we're Jewish, so therefore we're Jewish, like the moron Kanye West said. Or, people that say, listen, even though it says that a Kohen cannot marry a convert or cannot marry a divorcee, listen, over here, I don't think it applies because maybe this and maybe that, and they try to literally manipulate the law. Even if you fool your spouse and your kids and your neighborhood and even the local rabbis, and you fooled even the local Bet Din, Rav Elchanan Wasserman says, you're never going to fool Hashem and His Torah. Still, the Torah says no, that means no. Even if you somehow manipulated the words and brought an argument and convinced everyone, it doesn't make a difference. If the Gemara says A, then it's A, the end. If the Gemara concluded that such a person does not qualify to be Jewish, then he's not Jewish. And this, Rav Elchanan Wasserman says, also includes those that are born to Jewish parents, but are yet decreed as idol worshippers because of the sins that they make, such as Mechalel Shabbat, or violates Yom Kippur on purpose, or is an atheist, or denies the Torah, denies the oral Torah, denies the written Torah. Someone that's a heretic, someone that's a Mechalel Shabbat, someone that's an atheist, is considered an idol worshiper. And no manipulation of the words and the different statements that people remember or they want to remember when it's convenient for them is ever going to change that unless those people do tshuva. Just like the Rambam says in the introduction to Perek Chelek in Masechet Sanhedrin, the 10th chapter, people that deny even a word of the oral Torah of the Talmud are considered 100% heretics, apikorsim, that have no share of the Torah, have no share of Olam Haba. They cannot be counted in the minyan, they cannot be used as a witness. And even if that person is your father or your mother or your husband or your wife or your child or your best friend or even your rabbi, it doesn't make a difference. The Torah is the Torah and it doesn't change because of your particular circumstance or emotions. The only thing Rav Wasserman says, the only thing that would help those people that were born to Jewish parents but are considered idol worshippers is if they do tshuva, where even if they've made all of the sins in the world in the past, but now decide to go on a new path, a path of Torah, they could do tshuva, they could fix the past. But if they do not do tshuva and they continue with their heretical ways, they will be forever considered idol worshippers and removed from Klal Yisrael. Until then, says Rav Elchanan Wasserman, something painfully true. Until then, those people that are heretics, I'm not just talking about someone that is ignorant because and therefore secular, but yet he or she respects the Torah, but he doesn't follow it because he just doesn't know the obligation, doesn't know the punishment. She doesn't know the significance of modesty. She's clueless. She was brought up with secular parents. He was brought up with secular parents. They're clueless. So they're still considered idol worshippers. They're still considered that they're in trouble. But what Rav Elchanan Wasserman is now going to talk about is those people that are simply choosing to be heretics. Those people that change and manipulate the Torah. They don't accept the words of the sages. They reject them. They curse them. They insult them. Like this Borisov or Chen Shaulov or Manis Friedman, all these Reshaim, and any of their followers, any of their supporters, those types of people. Says, until these types of people, until these heretics do tshuva, they are considered like dead limbs in our nation that are spoiling the entire body. These are the words of Rav Elchanan Wasserman. These heretics, some of them that you may know, some of them you may even love, because it may be your husband, your daughter, your cousin, whoever it is. They speak against Dat Torah. They speak against the sages. They insult Chachamim. You should know. Heretic is an understatement. Rav Elchanan Wasserman is saying that person that you know that is a heretic, he is considered like a dead limb that's killing the rest of the body. The rest of the body being Am Yisrael. A dead limb, Rabotai, is much more dangerous than if the limb was completely cut off. If somebody has a bad case of diabetes, then they could be put in a situation where they have to cut off pieces of their body. Same thing with someone that has a bad case of frostbite, or chas v'shalom, if somebody has cancer. The doctors evaluate the situation, and because these dead limbs are endangering the rest of the body, where if they continue coexisting, connected to the body, they'll end up poisoning and killing the rest of the body. And therefore, in the medical world, the number one strategy and only strategy is to cut off that dead limb. Cut it off. Because once it's cut off, it won't cause any more damage. Yeah, but now the person's not going to have any toes, any arm, any what? Yes, you're right. He won't have those dead limbs connected to him that used to be toes or used to be fingers or used to be an arm or whatever it was. You're right, he won't have that anymore, but he'll have life. He'll still live. She'll still live. And it's better to have a life with a body that's completely healthy, even if it's not 100% like it used to be, than have a complete body that's dead. The fact that the Jewish heretics are still connected to Am Yisrael is a big problem. It'd be better off if they were cut off. And you'd say, well, what about loving your brothers? What about the fact that they still, go to shul, they still give tzedakah, they still do other mitzvot? You're not understanding. This is not my opinion. This is the way of the Torah. And to give you a few examples, one of the great Chachamim of the previous generation, Rabbi Yitzhak Harif. Rabbi Yitzhak Harif fought tooth and nail against the Maskilim, against the reformers. And some of them found themselves in his Keilah, and they came to the Rabbi, and they said, listen, Rabbi, if you don't change different parts of the Siddur prayer, we're going to Christianity and converting. They didn't like the parts of the prayer that talk about returning to Zion, returning to Yerushalayim. Because he said, listen, Berlin, Germany's Berlin, that's the new Jerusalem. They didn't want to go to Israel. They didn't want to support Israel. They wanted Berlin to be the new capital of the Jews. That's how far removed they were from the truth. And they thought that Rav Harif was going to put his head down and say, listen, I can't lose so many members of the Kehillah, of the community, like unfortunately some other rabbis would do. But to their dismay and surprise, Rav Harif started laughing. He goes, oh, okay, so that means I'll have more fish. Thank you. What? More fish? What fish? What are you talking about? He goes, oh, you don't know. He says, you see in the Gemara, in Masechet Baba Batra, page 74b, it talks about how two of the sages were on a boat, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Eliezer was sleeping, and Rabbi Yoshua was awake. And all of a sudden, Rabbi Yoshua saw something and started trembling, scared to death, and started pushing Rabbi Eliezer to wake up. Rabbi Eliezer said, what's wrong? What's wrong, Rabbi Yoshua? He said, I saw a great light in the sea. Something huge, enormous, and the light was like the light of the sun. Oh, says Rabbi Eliezer, you must have seen one of the eyes of the leviathan. As the Torah says in the book of Job, chapter 41, verse 10, that the eyes of the leviathan are shining like the sun at the break of dawn. And then the Gemara says some more details about the creation of the leviathan. It says in Bereshit, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 21, it says, Vayivra Elohim et hataninim agdolim. God created the great sea monsters. Here, the sages say, the great sea monsters is referring to the re'emim of the sea. A re'em is known as an enormous animal. You find it in several places, no less than 9 places in the Torah, in the Tanakh. Rabbi Yochanan says, yes, what is these, it's re'emim, what is these re'emim of the sea? He says, these great sea monsters are the leviathan, that's the straight snake, and the leviathan, that's the curved snake. Leviathan akalaton and leviathan nachash. I'm sorry, leviathan nachash akalaton and also leviathan nachash bariach. This was a male and female leviathan that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to the prophet Isaiah chapter 27 in verse 1 that these two types of leviathan were male and female, that on that day when Mashiach, when Hashem sends the Mashiach, God with his hard, great and mighty sword will judge Leviathan, the straight snake, and Leviathan, the curved snake. And he will kill the serpent in the sea. So what is this all about? Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, every creature that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in the world, he created both a male and a female, including the Leviathan. The Leviathan, the straight snake, and the Leviathan, the curved snake. And God created male and female and everything including them. But if they would mate together and bring offspring, have babies, they would end up destroying the entire world. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? In order to make sure that they don't destroy the world, they don't have any babies, he castrated the male, so he's not able to have any children, even with other creatures. And he killed the female and salted it to preserve it as food for the tzaddikim when the Mashiach arrives. As it says in Isaiah chapter 27. He also created some other behemoth, big other animals, which we'll talk about perhaps in a different time. So now, Rav Eizer Harif says to these maskilim, so you see, Hashem promised us that if we're tzaddikim, one of the ways we're going to celebrate when Mashiach comes is we're going to eat from this big, giant, kosher fish that Hashem has been preserving for us for nearly 6,000 years. But if there's a lot of tzaddikim, then I'll end up getting a small piece. But now that you guys are leaving, great, that means my piece is going to be bigger. The Maskilim did not expect this type of response. They thought they're going to scare the tzaddik into changing our Torah, into changing our customs. But when they saw his reaction, they realized nothing is going to change him. To go against the Torah, to go against the sages. They didn't go and convert to Christianity. Instead, they went and found a different rabbi to bother and see if they could convince the next one. And that's what they've been doing till this day, trying to continuously infiltrate different communities in order to poison the leaders, in order to become the leaders, and eventually poison the community itself. And Rav Elchanan Wasserman concludes, because of this, because of these dead limbs, the only way to win this war is by cutting the dead limb off, just like you'd cut off cancer, because keeping them connected risks the entire body. One rotten heretic can destroy an entire keilah, even an entire community or more. We already see the damage that some of these heretics that we've exposed over the years have caused. Literally, you have people that have abandoned any resemblance to the truth of the Torah after listening to these heretics. Now, of course, you're going to have some of the ignorant people that pretend that they know better than the sages, than the Shulchan Aruch, say, well, what about ve'afta l'reacha kamocha? That you must love your brother like you love yourself. What about that? Well, it specifically says ve'afta l'reacha. Someone that's reacha, someone that is part of your nation, cannot be a heretic at the same time. Because once a person chooses to go against, whether it's the written Torah or the oral Torah, or Dat Torah in general, they then remove themselves from being considered your brother or your sister. And one way to understand this is that if you use the same logic in a different way, where you're trying to convince the rabbi not to kick out the heretic, not to reject the heretic, because you should love him and accept him even though he went to all types of rainbow parades, even though he promotes the rainbow and that whole vile movement, even though he is part of the reason why Los Angeles is being burned, literally destroyed right now as we speak, Hashem Yilachem. Even though he's one of the reasons that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to take this Sodom and Gomorrah and destroy it with its $1 million and $100 million houses. Only 2 days after Hollywood made fun of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in public in one of their ceremonies celebrating their glory and their Oscars or Emmys or whatever it was. They literally mocked God on national television 2 days before HaKadosh Baruch Hu burnt all of their houses, or at least most of them. So you can say, well, look, we should love him because he's still Jewish, even though he doesn't believe the Torah is applicable in our generation, even though he's an atheist, even though. Now, let me explain something to you. You may not understand the value of the Torah, so when you hear that someone is no longer part of the community, no longer considered a Jew, his Judaism is literally on suspension, he's considered an idol worshiper, it's hard for people to digest that because they want to make peace. But peace is not possible at all costs. We're not the Zionist Israeli government that literally is just complying with whatever horrible terms are given, releasing thousands of terrorists that were literally supposed to get the death penalty just to go and get a couple of their own people back. So not realizing that, yes, it's nice to have a couple of our people back, but you realize that those 1,000 or more terrorists that have killed people already, are going to come back and kill more people. A lot more than what you're freeing, just like what happened with Gilad Shalit and what happened with those terrorists that were released. One of them is the founder of this whole October 7th. So when you negotiate with such foolishness to accept everyone no matter what, you're actually jeopardizing the safety of many more than what you think you're saving. And if you were to come to your community and say, listen, this guy, he's a pedophile and he hurt a bunch of kids, but he means well. He really likes kids. We shouldn't kick him out. We should bring him closer. Maybe he'll stop torturing and hurting kids. Maybe he'll stop giving people trauma for the rest of their life. If we bring him closer, maybe give him an aliyah. Maybe the rabbi should spend some one-on-one time with him. Maybe we should make him a teacher in the community. If you brought that logic, that fake love logic, anyone that's listened to you that still has arms will probably use both of them on your face. You're going to bring a pedophile to our community? Someone that's known as a pedophile, someone that's hurt kids and has traumatized them and their parents for the rest of their life? That the Torah says that someone that does that is considered as if he murdered, because that's what the Torah compares rape to, that's murder. So you're going to bring a murderer to our community because you like him? Because you think that this is the right thing to do? And I'm not even sure if they're going to use both of their hands on your face and then say what I said, or they're just going to just use the hands on your face and perhaps maybe after you come out of the hospital, they'll explain to you why they did it. I'm not really sure. But either way, if you try to use that type of logic to bring a pedophile or rapist or any one of these vile murderers into a community, no one will accept that. But you see, the way the Torah works is that the sages explain to us, in the name of God, Gadola machtio min haorgo. Someone that causes others to sin is worse than someone that kills them. Meaning, the heretic that is perverting people's minds, poisoning their minds with an ideology that is against the Torah, that is telling them that things that are forbidden are now allowed, and things that are allowed are now forbidden. Such a person, such a vile heretic, is considered worse than a murderer. Because while the murderer is removing somebody's physical life, he doesn't hurt their eternal life. Whereas a spiritual murderer, a heretic, is destroying both this life and the next. Certainly, the eternal world is not going to be heaven, but rather the opposite. But even their current life in this world becomes demented and distorted, just like the ideology. Now you're going to say, wait, but didn't the great rabbis have more patience and acceptance even for these heretics? Isn't Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, alav shalom, known to have patience and acceptance of everybody? No. And a couple of examples of that are these stories I'm going to tell you. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was known to have absolute love for Am Yisrael. So long as they had respect for the Torah, even if they didn't follow it completely, he spent his entire life doing kiruv and helping publicize the Torah, whether it's in the Ashkenazi world, the Sephardi world, the Yemenite world, the Ethiopian world. He publicized the Torah for every community. And he loved Jews with a passion. But yet, one Purim, there was a decree by the head of education in Israel, a Rasha named Yossi Sarid, that was literally responsible for destroying the educational system in Israel. So when Rabbi Ovadia Yosef came to the shul, when they were reading the Megillah, and it's customary to say, Arur Aman, and everybody repeats Arur Aman 3 times, meaning cursed is Aman, accursed is Haman, accursed is Aman. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef also added, Arur Yossi Sarid, and everybody repeated, Arur Yossi Sarid, Arur Yossi Sarid. And literally cursed this Rasha Merusha that has already left this world and is rotting in Gehenom forever for what he did. When it was time to fight the heretics, no one did it better than Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. There was also another time, a story that's less known. My dear Rav Ephraim heard this recording himself. This happened in the kollel that he went to for many years. The building, the kollel Yechaveh Da'at of Rav David Yosef, the current Rishon LeZion. Some years ago, there was a religious heretic that was speaking against the Chachamim of the generation and even saying bad things about them, all types of horrible things. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef came to the Kollel Yechaveh Da'at, spoke to all of the Avrechim, Rabbanim over there. He said, I want you to know, there's a guy named such and such, son of such and such. Everyone knew who he was talking about, who speaks against the Chachamim. I am putting him on Nidui. He's on Cherem. And he has no share of this world or Olam Haba. And he won't live past this year. Here, you have Rabbi Ovadia Yosef showing exactly what the Shulchan Aruch says we have to do with heretics. While the Torah tells us that we have to love our fellow Jews, that's so long as they are our fellow Jews, not those that are trying to remove us from Judaism. It teaches us that yes, there's a time to do kiruv, even with people that are completely secular and clueless. There's a time also to rebuke people. And there's a time to be angry, to fight for the Torah, to fight for the truth of the Torah. This is how a father, a leader, is supposed to act. To think that you can just love everybody and everybody's going to love you. The Gemara itself testifies. If everyone in the community loves the rabbi, then he's the problem. Because it's not possible for everyone to love you if you're actually doing your job as a rabbi, as a leader. You have to be rebuking some people, so they're probably not going to like you for that time. You have to be telling people the truth, so that means that some people are not going to agree with you at some times. But if everybody loves you no matter what, that means you're not being a good rabbi. And therefore, Rav Elchanan Wasserman says, when there is a dead limb and you want to save the body, the only option then is to cut it off. And what about those heretics that insist on calling themselves Jews, says Rav Elchanan Wasserman? You must know that this opinion of theirs, that they are Jews, no matter what, even without keeping the Torah, is just like all of their opinions that are against Da'at Torah, because their opinions are built on top of a fraudulent foundation that says that you can be a Jew without following the Torah and the mitzvot. This type of conclusion that the heretics have aims to uproot the entire Torah. And unfortunately, this fraudulent ideology is still affecting us even in the religious communities. And many times, those that are knowledgeable and even in a leadership position stay silent and don't tell the people the things that they're supposed to hear from the leader. And this leads to heresy growing even within the community. Another example of how Gdolei Yisrael dealt with heretics is something that you see today, when people tell you, listen, if God is real, I want him to make a miracle for me right now, and then I'll be religious. If he gives me this right now, I'll do it. I'll become more religious than you, Rabbi. You ever hear those types of people? They have a complete misunderstanding of the creator of all creations, the king of all kings, Akadosh Baruch Hu. They have no concept of anything bigger than themselves. So they think that Hashem is going to bow to every one of their commands. Well, why? If it's so easy for him, why can't he just make me a miracle? Rabbi Yisrael Misalant had one of those people in a community, where after traveling for a while, he came back to the community, and he saw that one of the community members, that was religious, is now without a beard, without a kippah. He says to him, what happened? What happened to you? No, Rabbi, listen, I'm not even sure if God exists. I don't know, I'm completely, I just have to take a break. But what happened? So the guy tells him, listen, one of my maskilim friends, one of the heretic friends that he has, bad choice in friends, obviously, was saying, look, you believe in this God, that he could do everything, that he wrote this Torah. I'll prove it to you that he doesn't even exist. Look. And he shows him his plate full of pig. He takes one of these sausages. He says, listen, if your God is real, he said that not to eat pork, right? Well, I'm going to eat it right now. And if he's really going to kill me right now, I'll die from choking. And I was sure, he says, that this guy was going to die. How he was scorned God in such a way. Not only is eating pig, but he's even daring God to kill him. I was sure he's going to die. But to my surprise, he took a bite, and another bite, and another bite, and the whole time he's laughing. And then after that, I said, well, if God didn't kill him, maybe there isn't a God. Rabbi Yisrael Misalant went to this person's house. He didn't rebuke him right away. He wanted to cleverly wait for the perfect moment. And when he came to this guy's fancy house to speak to him, put some sense back into him, waiting for the perfect moment, during that time, this guy's daughter came in to the house. Little kid, jumpy and happy, and she has a new certificate in her hand. She says, Abba, I'm the best. Oh, I know you're the best. What is you the best on? Look, I won. My teacher told me that I'm the best piano player in the entire class, in the entire school. Oh, wow, look at that. You see that, Rabbi? We have a new musician. We have a new giant musician in the family now. Rabbi Yisrael Misalant says to the girl, can I see that, please? He looks at the certificate with a little gold, little stamp on it, and the words. And he says to the girl, what's to say that this is even real, though? I was like, what do you mean? Well, how can I rely on this piece of paper that says that you're the best musician? What's to say? Why should I believe that? I mean, do you know how to play Bach? Yeah, I know. I never heard it. Do you know how to play all the Beethoven? Yeah, I know. I never heard it. And he starts naming different symphonies and different music. And she says, yeah. And he's like, well, I never heard it. He's like, listen, until I actually hear you playing on a piano and all of these different things in such a high level. I can't believe this certificate. And the kid, of course, gets so offended how the famous rabbi just completely destroyed all of her accomplishments, and she cries out to our father, "What is this, Abba? What am I doing here? What is it? What's all this worth? What do I need this certificate for? If every time somebody's going to look at it, he's going to tell me, well, listen, we can't believe you because we didn't hear you play the music." Of course, the father is embarrassed. And he says to the Rabbi, she really did it. Look, she got a certificate. And Rabbi Yisrael Misalant smiles at the man and he says, "You're right. Your daughter is right. But your ears should hear the words that are coming out of her mouth and apply it to your life of Torah. 3,300 years ago, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Torah to millions and millions of Jews. And in fact, the entire world was witness to it and knew about it, proven by the fact that when Yeshua ben Nun brought Am Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, everyone knew that the Jews received the Torah. When he spoke to Rachav, before she converted to Judaism, she told them, "We all knew that you received the Torah." How did you know? Did you get a WhatsApp message? Was it on a New York Times? How did you hear? HaKadosh Baruch Hu made sure the entire world knew that we have just received the Torah. Millions of people witnessed this. As Moshe Rabbeinu says to Am Yisrael, it's written in the Torah, all of you saw everything that Hashem has done for you. You didn't just hear about it, talk about it. All of you saw what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. And after that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the written Torah, gave us the certificate, gave us the proof that all of this happened. And for 3,300 years, we have been living by this. Now you say that you don't remember being at Mount Sinai. And perhaps you want Hashem to make you a new miracle. To kill the guy that's eating pork. Or to do some other form of miracle. So what, you think that every time some Joe Schmo is going to ask Hashem for proof, he has to comply? He's the King of Kings. That's the whole point of the certificate. That's the whole point of the Torah itself. And that's the problem, Rabotai Karim, that many people have until this day. They have this impression of God that He's like them. Similar to the poisonous ideology of Manis Friedman and Chabad today, unfortunately, that God needs you, and they humanize God. Not just in their words by saying He has arms and legs and a body and so on, all types of other idolatrous types of statements, all spearheaded by Manis Friedman and his followers. But they even conclude that He has emotions like us and He thinks like us, and if we wouldn't do something, He wouldn't do it, and all types of things. So the guy in the story of Rabbi Yisrael Misalant concludes that if he was God, then He would certainly kill the guy that's eating a non-kosher hot dog. Did you forget that in the very same Torah, in our prayer, it says, El Rachum V'Chanun Erech Apayim, that He's a merciful God that does not punish right away. He doesn't act like you. He's not a gangster like you. He's not quick to anger like you, hot-tempered like you. He's nothing like you. He doesn't think like you. And the moment you equated yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in any way, shape, or form, your path of heresy was straight to Gehenom. And unfortunately, Rabotai, this type of issue is not something you're going to find in the secular world only. This is something you're going to find even in your local shul. En bait she'en bo met. There's no house that doesn't have a dead body. They said in the Torah about Egypt, after the plague of the firstborn. Every place has one of these heretics, two of these heretics or more. Shem Yachem. And what happens with these heretics? They're very, very active in their missionizing. They don't stay quiet with their heresy. They must publicize them. They must speak against the sages, against Chachmei Israel, against the Torah scholars, against the Avrechim, against Da'at Torah, against the Talmud, against different parts, and mix them up and with all types of poisonous thoughts. Now, if you are to try that same thing with a doctor, a lawyer, a police officer, a pilot, how would that look? If you told a police officer, listen, prove to me that you're a police officer. Police officer will tell you, what do you mean? I have a badge. Yeah, but maybe you just bought that online. How do I know you're really a police officer? Well, you'll know in a few minutes when I put you in jail. No, but I mean, how do I know? Maybe you're a fake. Maybe you're this. Or if you went to the doctor and you look in the doctor's office, they usually have many of their certificates and achievements on the wall. So how do I know you're really a doctor that graduated from these universities? Maybe you're not really a spinal surgeon or a heart surgeon. Maybe you're a veterinarian. Maybe you went to school and you really got a certificate for medicine, but really to be a vet, to work on animals. And you figured animals, people, same thing. Some are on 4, some are on 2. How do I know you're really a doctor? How do I know you're an expert? I'm not going to believe you until you prove it to me. What's the doctor going to say to you? If you went to a lawyer and he said the same thing, how do I know you're a lawyer? Maybe you're the criminal. Maybe you're the one that stole. Maybe you're the one that's... How's the lawyer going to look at you? Now, obviously, a normal person is not going to do that. He's not going to question the police officer. He's not going to question the doctor. He's not going to question the pilot. How do I know you're really a pilot? He's not going to do any of that. Why? Because he has some common sense. There's enough reasons to believe that these people are what they are. But yet, when it comes to the Torah, he's not going to use that same logic. When it comes to the Torah, he's going to conclude that he knows more than the Torah scholars, that he knows more than the Rabbi, that he knows more than Gdolei Israel. He knows more than people that have dedicated decades and decades of their life to studying every ounce of Torah they can get their hands on. And him with his first grade level of reading has concluded that he knows more than the greatest chachamim of his generation, the greatest chachamim of the previous generation. He knows more than the Rambam, he knows more than Rabbi Akiva, he knows more than David HaMelech. He concludes. How come you didn't do the same thing with the doctor, with the lawyer, with the pilot, with everybody else? But when it comes to Torah scholars, when it comes to the world of Torah, you concluded easily that you know more than everybody else, that everyone is wrong until they came to you. You rediscovered the sun. That's because, Rabotai Karim, when a person does not have respect for the Torah, respect for Da'at Torah, they're not going to see the need to have a rabbi. They're not going to see the need to go with what the halakha is. They're not going to see the need to listen to anyone. In so many words, they actually become more rotten as a result of them doing tshuva, as a result of them learning a little bit of Torah, where instead of the Torah becoming the cure for life, it becomes the poison of death for those people. The moment a person loses respect for Da'at Torah, he literally becomes an enemy of the public as well as an enemy of him or herself. Rav Shach did not skip a beat when it came to speaking the truth. In one of his famous speeches, speaking against the heretics, a speech that was questioning what makes you Jewish. Those people that are not following the Torah, not following the mitzvot. What makes you still think you're Jewish? Just because you live in Israel, that makes you Jewish? And he gave a speech that literally got to all four corners of the world, caused a lot of noise. And in there he says as follows, Alpaim shana anachnu levad biyadim rakot. 2,000 years we are alone with empty hands. En lanu neshek. We don't have weapons. So how do we survive? We won. We're here standing and existing. And what's the secret? The miracle is that I am a Jew and I am stronger than them. Even if they kill me, my children will stay alive because I did not disconnect myself from my forefathers, and neither will they. I went in the directions of our father, in the directions of our grandfather, in the directions of our grandmother. I learned my wisdom, meaning the Torah, and also my customs. But you, the secular Jew, you say you're still a Jew? You have a Brit Milah? Do you even know your traditions? What is your traditions? What are your customs? English? What are your traditions? Do you even know what you're reading when you open the Chumash? Do you understand the words? It says there are some kibbutzim that do not even know, the people there do not even know what Yom Kippur is. They don't know what Shabbat is. They don't know what a mikveh is. They raise rabbits and pigs as animals to eat. You're saying they have a connection to their Father in heaven? They have a tradition? This is a tradition that's holy? They disconnected themselves from their past. They disconnected themselves from our past, and they're requesting a new Torah. If there's no Shabbat and there's no Yom Kippur, then what makes you Jewish? And then he completes the speech by saying, there are those that will say that these words that I'm saying are like a fanatic. Things that are ancient, not of this time. But our holy Torah says, this Torah is our wisdom. In our eyes and in the eyes of the nations. And the Torah testifies that it is the wisdom of the Jews even in the eyes of the nations. Meaning that Jews are only considered wise in the eyes of the nations because of their Torah. Now after this speech went public, a bunch of secular Jews from the kibbutz came to the neighborhood of Rav Shach and protested outside his house. He came out. He says, you want me to tell you why I said what I said? Come inside my house. And a bunch of them went inside his house. And for the next while, Rav Shach spilled the blood of his heart from the pain and agony that he has over their secularism, over their heresy, explaining to them what a Jew is. And many of those people ended up doing tshuva as a result and abandoned the heretical ways. When a person understands that when we speak these words, it's not to cause turmoil, but rather to preserve the nation. Because if we're going to follow the ideology that everyone is welcome as they are, no matter what, even if they're against the Torah, then what we're doing is we're quickly killing the entire nation. That's what Rav Elchanan Wasserman said. That's what the Chafetz Chaim said. That's what Rav Shach said. That's what Rav Ovadia said. That's what the Gemara in the Shulchan Aruch says. That's what the Rambam says. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. So long as we allow the heretics to remain under the same roof, we are putting the entire body in danger. The Malbim, who had to fight against the Maskilim tooth and nail to the point where they almost got him killed, was once shown a Bet Midrash in an area where there was a lot of Maskilim, a lot of heretics. And he says this Bet Midrash is like Tevat Noach, the Ark of Noach. Why? The Torah says that to protect what's inside the Ark, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Noach to put kofel, certain type of chemical, around the Ark. He says outside of this Bet Midrash is all the kofrim, all the heretics. Same word, kofel. Gdolei Yisrael never feared going to war against the heretics publicly. This whole ideology of maybe you could discuss it with them, maybe you could see and have them explain to you why they said what they said. If somebody says things that are against the Torah, whether it's the written Torah or the oral Torah, publicly, or they write it, you don't need their explanation. What they said is what they meant. That's the way it's understood. That's what Rav Elyashiv, when he saw the words that Lord Jonathan Sachs wrote in his book, Rav Elyashiv Gdol Ador Paskin, that he is a heretic until he not only changes these words, but he removes all of the books from the stores, which Lord Sachs did not do. Even when he said, no, I made a mistake, I didn't mean that, he still did not take back what he did and get the books out of the stores. Gdolei Yisrael did not shy away from going against heretics, Rabotai, because they knew that it's in order to preserve our nation, this fight against Amalek is an absolute necessity, just like observing Shabbat is, just like having Brit Milah is. And when the Chachamim were put on the same stage as the heretics, they didn't pretend to be friends. When the Malbim was put on stage in an event that was apparently funded by 5 Maskilim leaders, they told him, you have to say something nice about them. As soon as he got his opportunity to speak, he said, you see these 5 Maskilim, they are Keneged Kol HaTorah Kula, the 5 books of Moses. Wow, they're neged all, meaning they're against the entire Torah. They violate every part of the Torah. Gdolei Yisrael did not skip a beat, did not mince their words, did not stutter. When it came time to helping people do tshuva, they did everything possible to help. When it came time to going against the Reshaim, they did everything they possibly could to fight the fight that everybody knows this is the fight. These are the footsteps we must all follow to remove the dead limbs from the body that's already suffering. And once we do, perhaps, Rabotai, there'll be enough to save for us to celebrate one day and eat the portion of the leviathan that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has reserved for each and every one of his righteous people. Thank you very much for learning with me. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every one of you to succeed in your fight of Amalek. And Be'ezrat Hashem, each person will take the opportunity to publicize Torah, to publicize this and many of the lectures that we have, the USBs that you can get on the Kiruv store or the Yeshaya Tzar or the books, to publicize as much Torah as possible and to also donate to help us pay for all of these extremely expensive books and USBs and cards and everything that we're doing. Because Rabotai Karim, when you invest into Kiruv, when you help us do all that we do, you become a partner in all of the results. When a person does tshuva and ends up living his life as a tzaddik, as a tzaddikah, every single one of those mitzvot goes to your account also. And you may very well need all of those mitzvot in order to fix your past, in order for you to clear your future's path, in order for you to succeed in elevating yourself in Torah, elevating yourself in Parnassah, finding a shidduch, completing your conversion, having a child. Kiruv is not a favor that you're doing anyone else but yourself. And that's why Rabotai Karim, all of Gdolei Israel always invested an enormous amount of their time and their life publishing the truth, which also included fighting against the lies. Hashem gives us 24 hours in a day. He gives everybody a certain amount of parnassah. Choose well how you use all of that. And anyone that wants to choose wisely can go to be'ezrathashem.org, and Be'ezrat Hashem will become partners over there. Call to Bracha B'Atzlacha, and Be'ezrat Hashem will learn again later this week.